Good morning, everyone. Nolan Bowerly, Bitcoiner. Another episode of The Breakup where we look at changing your frame, changing your mindset, and understanding that the game isn't to trade US dollars for Bitcoin. That's not quite enough. That can lead you to all kinds of trouble. The game is really to break up with the US dollar and, fall in love with the better money and cherish it and store it. So it's not about anything you can really learn in a book. It's not about anything you can necessarily um, achieve through going to school and all the rest of it. It really is a mindset, and it really is about understanding that the relationship you're in with the US dollar is pretty sick and unhealthy, and you need to get out of it. So today, the three reasons I have for which you would get rid of and break up with fiat currency start with this idea that um, the news industry, right? So think of it as industry, not the news, not the idea of getting news and information and all the rest. The news industry is really just a carrier signal for persuasion. It was Scott Adams who tweeted that. So think of it. The news industry is a carrier signal for persuasion. So it's not about gathering information, which is all right. I'm not one of these do your own research people. I'm not one of these folks that says you can figure all this stuff out on your own. The mental load is too much. You simply can't handle it. The best approach likely is to find folks whose predictions are strong, who seem to have a good worldview and are able to see around corners and do your best to understand their way of thinking, and then certainly adds talents to your own frame so that when you're looking at things, your skills and incisiveness get greater so that you yourself can predict the future. This show has a lot to do with predictions. We're always going to be covering predictions just because they help us gain confidence in the people who we are trying to learn from. So this is not any, I'm not trying to oppose learning. I'm not trying to oppose new information. What I am mentioning here is the news industry, its incentives and calibrations. So case in point today, you're seeing government talking points blending with news broadcasts, right? They're bringing a persuasive point of view. Um, and it's along the lines of inflation. So I want to highlight a couple of them. I know this show does talk about inflation here and there. This is not really about inflation. What I want to talk about is the coordination and simpatico that's going on between um, news media headlines and the talking points that the one political party in particular is coming up with. So the party in power in this case. So what we have is a series of bills that suggest, and headlines now that suggest how a $3.5 trillion spending bill, so they're going to spend $3.5 trillion, is the best thing America can do to fight inflation, right? So maybe they're right. I don't care, right? Like maybe they can make a case. I just want you to take note that this, on face value, seemingly oxymoronic statement, the seemingly contradictory statement with the defies kind of logic, spending more money will stop the problem we have with spending money, um, seems a little ridiculous. So what we're trying to underline here is if there seems to be a coordinated response, the two folks are seeing and saying the same things in unison, but others are seeing things that would disagree with this point of view. We're in a world where we've got to sort of look at who's in agreement and who isn't. And so what we have here simply is messaging that I think is difficult to trust. So if I hear this kind of thing, to me it says these are not institutions that have my best interest in mind necessarily, and that they seem to be of the mind that the talking points are true. I'm not going to mind read what's going on exactly in the editor's chair in the media. I have several ideas, but I don't know the real answer. All I know is they're not really filtering. They're fulfilling that role of carrier signal for the persuasion. So if that's not a good enough reason to break up with this US dollar system, just understanding that it has, military grade persuasion tools at its disposal and we'll use them. And so my attitude to that is like, I'm scared. You know what I mean? Like if there's that much stuff coming my way, um, get out of the way. And in my case, that's for a long time now been one of the main reasons to break up. I worked under the Stephen Harper government in Canada for a lot of years, and he predated Trumpism. And I'll tell you, I've been called a Nazi for a lot longer than most Trump folks. And so I've been dealing with this coordination of a certain political party or political persuasion. It's not one party, it's the whole part of that spectrum, and their relationship with news media. So, not to say I'm a victim, I'm not trying to claim victimhood. I broke up with this relationship a long time ago. So, this is not, I was a hard done by spouse. Nope. I had a look at Bitcoin and I split that party before Trump even came along. Um, I've said it before, as a Bitcoiner, I love Donald Trump. But as a Bitcoiner, I love Joe Biden a lot more. He is the best president we could have asked for. So more Joe Biden. That's not something we want to break up with necessarily. What we don't like about the Joe Biden administration in particular is their ability to get their talking points run on the carrier signal and broadcast it. So that's a good enough reason to break up in my book. Now, along those lines, you can say that um, it's a good thing. I heard the U.S. Press Secretary yesterday, Psaki, say yesterday that high gas prices are a good thing, high beef prices are a good thing, right? There was even a talking head on the news today. It's making rounds, and she said, "Well, it's kind of a dirty little secret that people have enough money to handle all this inflation because housing's done well and all this other stuff is done really well and stocks are up and Bitcoin's up. And so what are they complaining about the cost of steak?" Well, I'm not sure if this lady's ever lived paycheck to paycheck or ever met anyone who lived paycheck to paycheck. So remember, even go back to the Trump times. One of the things I said that should have discounted the media at the time is no one in New York City, and I was living in New York City at the time, working in media and going to CNN offices, going to the CNBC offices, going to all these major media outlets pretty regularly. And I'll tell you, they never met a Trump supporter in their life back then. It was that bad. Um, Dogfight going on out there. So, however much confidence you have in these folks, you should probably have less. Along the same lines, we saw our Gary Gensler, who used to write in CoinDesk, my old publication. So Gary has been talking a lot about what's going on with Bitcoin ETFs, cryptocurrency stuff, in particular the Bitcoin ETF. The reason it was not approved, so he recently didn't approve this, what's supposed to be a great vehicle to get more people exposed to Bitcoin. So ETFs are sort of the vanilla ice cream or the chocolate ice cream of finance. They're really easy to buy for most people. They perform quite well. They're a plug and play solution to investing that does save you a lot of money on fees. So they're wonderful instruments for that. But the reason why people have been so excited is because if Bitcoin is turned into an ETF format, it'll be a lot easier for institutions to make huge buys and theoretically will push up the price of Bitcoin. So a lot of Bitcoiners have been anticipating this for a long time. I myself am not really one of them. I've always been a fan of the on-chain traffic that comes with pumps around Bitcoin, right? That's kind of the point of having a limited supply object psychologically, is that you can create FOMO by winding up the winding up it's like a wind up doll, right? You wind up the jack in the box and it gets all kinds of tension, and that happens because Bitcoin, is measured in time more than anything, and the time of the blocks and the time that it takes to get from one size of the as the chain grows type of thing. So if you do these transactions on chain, you're actually you have a limited amount of buying opportunity for a limited resource, which is an excellent coil. You get a lot of tension in that. So for all the folks who said, ETFs are great, I'm not here to really have an opinion on that. I don't care one way or the other. I just see a downside to them. But here's what Gary said. They didn't release the ETF because of consumer protection, right? They don't want consumers losing and all that. So now you've got Ryan Selkis, and if any of you aren't following Ryan Selkis on Twitter, you really have to. because Ryan is making one of the strongest cases right now to expose Gary Gensler and the sort of inside friendly, chummy nature of the SEC and a lot of financial regulatory boards between Wall Street and DC. And it looks like he's going to be the biggest thorn in everyone's side for this, and that's the party I'm into. But if you're wondering who your better partner is in this, there shouldn't be any question. Ryan Selkis is fighting for you. And all of these other folks, I mean, they have principles that they're trying to uphold. It's ideas they're fighting for. I'm not saying they're necessarily malicious, but you're dealing with a partner, if you are on the side of the SEC here, who really is more interested in following the rules and making sure they keep their toes, on the right line. They're not looking at the world around them, really. They're trying to be compliant with their mandate, which is the original mandate, which is that if you're not rich enough, don't play here. And if you're not rich enough, it's probably because you're too stupid to invest in stuff, and we're going to protect you. A lot of that attitude was the answer to the Great Depression and the stock market crash of '29. And to this day, that attitude still prevails in these institutions that, you idiot, you're not going to be able to do this. And I'll, one of the things that you can see in sort of the history of participation in new networks and new opportunities happened, the same effect that happened with investing happened with cryptography, in that in the 1980s, it was already deemed, that we were going to be too stupid to manage this stuff, and someone else would have to run our cryptographic keys for us, which is why we've traded our dog's name and our mother's maiden name and all of our personal information to someone so that they'd run cryptographic keys for us. Right? That's what public key cryptography public key infrastructure looks like, with certificate authorities and someone else in the middle. Of course, Bitcoin solves that, right? Solves that problem and assumes that you're capable of managing your own cryptographic keys, you're capable of managing your own money. Whether that's true or not, I guess time will tell, but I'm in camp do it yourself in this case, and I'm in camp don't rely on these other people, because they're going to say shit like, we're not going to let you make money because you're too dumb. So that's what happens when you stay in a relationship with these folks. And so we wish Ryan Selkis absolutely all the best. We're there to help. And he certainly has an amazing job ahead, but I think I think he's going to get there, frankly. The ending of this story is way better if Ryan Selkis wins. And I'm in it to see him win and gloat over these smashed out relics. So I think Ryan Selkis will do it. So if you want to go to a cool party, follow Ryan Selkis one day. The party's not tomorrow or today, but it's coming. And if you want to go party with the losers and the people who are going to be crying their eyes out, poor, who are already poor because they've never been able to participate in any of the wealth creation that's gone on around cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular. But, if it's just wealth you're after, cryptocurrencies have certainly served their fans really well. And the SEC absolutely doesn't want you to participate in that because you're dumb. So we continue to live in a world where accredited investors, rich people, have access to the opportunities and others don't. And that's just the reality, right? That's the system they're trying to preserve. If you're in a relationship with them, that's the system you want to perpetuate. You have to assume it. You have to assume the reality of that. The idea that you're helping people is patently false, because all of us criminals who were in cryptocurrencies who you weren't able to help are kind of laughing at you now, and we're a lot richer than you are, and we don't really need your help. I think you need a help with a new job. What are you making? Some boring salary. So we're here. We got jobs. Next, third reason. So we got the let's say the carrier signal aspect of the news and the coordination with government officials, spokespeople when it comes to inflation. We have a similar line when it comes to not so much the media that's important here, more like the market manipulators themselves. Right, that's the reason to break up. So it's the carrier signal of the media. In this case, now the regulations actually that limit you from participating in any form of transformation of your capital by investing. And the final one, this one's hilarious. So PBS did an interview with Ai Weiwei. I don't know how many of you are fans of Ai Weiwei. He's a pretty amazing guy. A Chinese dissident who, of course, has to live abroad and can't live in China anymore, and is talking regularly about the authoritarianism around China. And he was asked in a PBS interview if, what's it like coming to America with authoritarianism, and what do you say to the Trump supporters? And hey, wait, what do you mean? I don't really think the Trump thing is the authoritarian thing. He says, I think you have it in America, though. I think you have authoritarianism. What it looks like to me is all this stuff about woke and cancel culture and the protests look a lot more like the Chinese Cultural Revolution than you realize. And he made the case that America is actually living in a a dystopian nightmare of authoritarianism throughout the land. So, if an actual victim and political dissident of what we can all agree is an authoritarian regime, the Chinese Communist Party, says to you, I recognize your country as an authoritarian regime for these reasons, and not the reasons that you tried to put in my mouth, what do you think the response should be? Do you think they should maybe listen or say, maybe you know more about this? Maybe I have a blind spot on what authoritarianism really is, and maybe I should listen to a person who's experienced it throughout their whole life and is a living embodiment of what happens to authoritarianism. But of course, that never happened, and that never happened. And he was treated like an idiot and was sent on his way. And I'm sure you will hear nothing else of it other than on this show and a few others like my own. So if those aren't three great reasons to quit fiat, I don't know what to tell you. Those are my three reasons for the day. Now, I had the, let's say, happy news. There was some technological innovation around Bitcoin today. It enacted yesterday, Taproot. Hopefully brings some privacy preserving aspects to Bitcoin and more use cases. Doesn't really need to, but nevertheless, this shows a little bit about what can happen when people get together and start creating better money. And I want to point out one piece, because someone put this Taproot aspect into a perspective that I think is useful for the show and useful for this breakup mindset. And that is that yesterday when this Taproot upgrade happened, they didn't say anything about Taproot. They just said El Salvador had its monetary base upgraded today. Congratulations, El Salvador. Of course, El Salvador treats Bitcoin as a currency, as a foundation of their economy going forward. And one of the great things that you can sort of conclude from this is that countries like El Salvador that have struggled to get monetary policy right for many, many years now have an off-the-shelf option. And of course, my prediction is you're going to see a lot more countries opt for the off-the-shelf monetary policy solutions that Bitcoin offers. And it's going to be a large catalyst. And it likely will make governments a lot more efficient because they're not going to have to solve this problem. They can actually just go towards deploying capital to the problems that they believe are important. And so we can all hope for a day that by breaking up with our governments, we're actually going to make them better at their jobs. And a lot of these South American countries, I think, will prove this theory. That's all I got for today, guys. I got the Glenn Greenwald show coming up soon. I'll be in Toronto again tomorrow morning, but we're driving back to Quebec, and I'll be there for a little bit, but I'll be crossing the U.S. border on land in a few days. We'll see how that goes. Thanks for your time, everyone, and talk again soon.